I'm human like everyone else. I do experience emotions. And I wouldn't be normal if I didn't experience feelings of anger and other emotions. But when you are a leader, you learn to control your emotions. You learn not to show them openly. You have to. I keep my emotions to myself. They are not for public display. I've never lost my temper in public.
No.
I've never wept in public.
How'd you manage to do that?
I have a lot of willpower, a lot of self-control.
But do you think politics has made you tougher?
Of course, yes. I wasn't like this at all. When I started out, I was very shy, terrified of meeting strangers. And I'm a person who hates the limelight.
Isn't that surprising?
It's very surprising. I have been propelled by fate into 2 high-profile careers. But I'm really a behind-the-scenes person. I've never consciously tried to appear tough. I suppose whatever I have done, my reactions or actions have made me appear tough.
Yes.
But I've never consciously attempted to appear tough. As for all these tags, it is because the media have been against me, not just for the past 3 years, but ever since I came to politics. Perhaps it is because the whole world is a stage and everyone is acting all the time, and I tend to be straight to the point. Hypocrisy is not my forte at all. That way, I must say, I am a bit unconventional for a politician. The role of the game seems to require considerable play acting. I have acted in films before the cameras, but I am incapable of acting in real life. I was just a child and I couldn't run away from home. And then mother explained the family circumstances to me. She told me that now she was not getting too many film offers. My grandfather had retired. So we had to support my grandparents, my aunt and her children. And my brother hadn't completed his education. So mother let me understand that there was no other way out really, that I had to earn and support the family. So when she explained the family circumstances to me, I was, to put it mildly, shocked.
Yeah.
Because until then, I had the impression that we were very wealthy. Mother had never allowed her worries to bother me or my brother. Right from the time we were born, we grew up thinking that we were millionaires' children. She gave us the best of everything. Anything that we wanted was there the next day. So we never really knew or understood how much she had to struggle to give us this kind of an upbringing. So when I finally understood, then my whole attitude changed. Then I felt a lot of sympathy for my mother. I thought mother had been through enough struggle and mother had suffered so much in her life that I thought it wasn't fair to expect her to keep on struggling and keep on suffering for our sakes. Then I thought it was my duty to provide relief to my mother
Sure.
and to take on the burden of supporting the family. So that is when I told mother to return the scholarship and accepted the film offers that had come our way. But everything was handed to me on a golden platter. Offers were pouring in by themselves. So she said, why not make use of it? Why not take it? When I was 4, the family shifted to Madras. And here, mother became so busy working in films that my brother and I were left entirely to the care of servants. So she thought this was not a healthy atmosphere to grow up in. So, from the age of 6 to 10, for 4 years, I was in Bangalore living with my grandparents and separated from my mother.
Was the separation hard?
I missed her terribly.
Did she visit you often?
She visited me whenever she could, but that wasn't very often. And I remember when I was about 5, she had come to Bangalore to see us. And I always used to cry whenever she left. So she used to put me to sleep. And I always used to sleep clutching her sari pallu in my hands, the edge of her sari. I'd wind it round my hand and go to sleep.
Tight like this?
Yes, very tight. So my mother found it impossible to get up and leave. So, leaving the edge of her sari in my hand, she used to gradually unwind the sari. And she used to make my aunt drape the sari around herself and lie down beside me so that I wouldn't notice her leaving. And then, of course, when I woke up and found that mother was gone, I used to cry and cry and cry, and I would be inconsolable for about 3 days. Then, of course, there was school and other activities, so I'd get over it. But I remember that during all those 4 years I was in Bangalore, I was pining for my mother every minute, every second.
You may say that the childhood doesn't have a bearing on one's life. Psychologically, Georgie, it does. You know,
Perhaps.
and it carries through in life.
When I look back on my life, I seem to have spent so little time with my mother. I have never really been satiated with the kind of love I expected and wanted and needed from my mother because there simply wasn't enough time. I did come to Madras to live with her from the time I turned 10, from 10 to 16. But then mother was so busy. She used to leave in the mornings before I woke up. She used to leave for work. And most days she would come back only after I'd gone to sleep. I remember once I'd won the first prize for an English essay I'd written at school. And I was so anxious to show this essay to her and show her the prize I'd won. I stayed up long past my usual bedtime. It was, I think, midnight when mother came back, and she found me sleeping on the sofa in the living room. So she asked me what I was doing there, why I wasn't in my bedroom. Then I was holding the prize I had won and my notebook with my essay in my hands. I was clutching them. So I showed them to her. So that is one of my treasured memories.
Because anything can happen in politics. Anything can happen in politics. So, you cannot say that I will traverse this path or go on that path. You can't predict all that in the future. You have to take events as they come and deal with situations as they arise. You have to be flexible.
Sure.
As far as we are concerned, as far as I am concerned, in politics, equations keep shifting, changing, situations keep changing. You never can predict what will happen tomorrow. This is one field where anything can happen at any time, and in order to be a successful leader and a successful politician, you have to seize opportunities when they arise. You have to be capable of flexibility to deal with situations as and when the need arises, and you always have to think of what is best for your party and what is best for the people who have placed their faith in you. Whether it's the people of the state or the people of the nation, you have to do justice. You have to do justice to the people. If you constantly keep looking back, and if you constantly keep harping on what happened in the past, you can't move ahead and you can't do politics. So, if you insist on thinking about what transpired in the past and you dwell on events that occurred in the past, you are stagnating. You're preventing yourself from moving forward. So as far as I am concerned, the past is past. I live in the present and look towards the future.
Once I decide to do something, whether I like it or not, I give it my all. I must excel in it. I must do it superlatively well. So, though I hated my career in films, but I was the number one star of my time. And though I shouldn't say it, I really don't like politics, but people say I am a successful politician and a good one.
Very
I'm
good.
surprised myself. I was lost. I was like a babe in the woods, blindfolded. Because mother was my whole world. And she never taught me anything practical. You see, she'd kept me so sheltered. Mother was only 47 when she died. So, no one thought she would die so young. She probably thought she'd be around a long time to take care of me, and she probably thought I was so overburdened with work that these other things could come later. But then the net result was I was left absolutely helpless when she died. I didn't know anything about running a house. I didn't know anything about, I didn't know how to operate a bank account. I didn't know how to write a check. I didn't know the meaning of income tax. I didn't know how many servants we had. I didn't know what their salaries were. I didn't know what the producers were paying me in the films in which I was acting. So, being an innocent babe lost in the woods, everyone could see that I was so naive and vulnerable and innocent. Everyone took advantage of me. So I had to learn everything the hard way.
I believe you have said that you even thought of ending your life at that time. Things must have been so desperate.
I don't think that's anything unusual. Sensitive people, emotional people go through these phases in life. It's a part of growing up.
But that feeling is the very end.
It is, no doubt. I have experienced that feeling, but I've overcome that and I've survived. I think that is what is important. I
Certainly.
didn't succumb to that feeling. But of course, I did feel lost when mother died. I didn't think I could manage without her. I didn't think I could cope with life for even a single day. But then, look at me now. I'm surprised at myself. There's been so much mud slung at me. I've had to face so many brickbats. I've had to face so much vilification and slander. That hasn't been easy. If I had been an academician, if I had been a lawyer, no one would have said such nasty things about me. When people interview an actor or a professional like a doctor or a lawyer, the very attitude is so respectful. But when it comes to a politician or a political leader, the questions are so downright demeaning, insulting, humiliating. People who know nothing about you, who've never met you, say the most vile things about you, and you have to take it with a smile. That's very difficult. And it's not true that if you are in politics long enough, you grow a thick skin. It never happens. If you're sensitive, if you're born sensitive, you stay sensitive till the end of your life. If you're hypersensitive like I am, you feel the pain magnified 1,000-fold than perhaps another person would. And then having to face this kind of slander and the kind of terrible distorted image that has been built up of me in the media, that really hurts, because that's not me, that's not what I am. Nothing really was worth the humiliation I suffered when I was attacked in the assembly, on the floor of the Legislative Assembly on March 25th, 1989, in the presence of the Chief Minister, Mr. Karunanidhi, with both his wives watching from the VIP boxes. All his MLAs and ministers physically assaulted me. They grabbed anything they could lay their hands upon. chairs, mics, a heavy brass bell on the speaker's table. If they had succeeded in banging it on my head, I wouldn't be alive today. My MLAs saved me that day. And one of them even tried to pull at my sari. They pulled at my hair. In fact, they tore out some of my hair. They threw chappals at me. They threw big bundles of papers, heavy books at me. That day, I left the assembly in tears, but I was also angry. I made a vow that day. I said, I will never set foot in this assembly again as long as this man continues to be the chief minister. And when I do enter this assembly again, I will enter as chief minister. And I fulfilled my vow within 2 years. I did it.
आजा सनम मधुर चांदनी में हम तुम मिले तो वीरानी में भी आ जाएगी बहार झूमने लगेगा आसमां